Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hi friend, you are listening to week 4 of the Summer of Friendship series. Last week, we talked about how much you are needed in community. If you missed that mini episode, be sure to go back and catch it. Today, as promised, we have a very special guest host, Sarah E. Westfall. Sarah is a writer, speaker, podcast host, and director of community for Hope Writers. Her work explores the intersection of faith, community, and connection. Sarah was a guest on the podcast a long while back on episode 17, sharing her story of motherhood and heartbreak and seeking God's goodness. Give that a listen to hear a little more of her story. Sarah is talking to us today about barriers to belonging. I hope you enjoy her words.
Daily, I carry the tension between my longing for meaningful connection and my resistance to it. I am the woman who makes plans with friends, but when the day of the gathering arrives, tries to talk herself out of going right up until the very last minute. Am I sick? I feel sick. I think I might be getting a fever. Sometimes I question whether it's worth it to keep trying. I convince myself that I could be quite content to live my tiny little life uninterrupted by people outside our walls. And maybe that's true. Perhaps me, myself, and I would get along swimmingly. But I also know the twistiness that comes when I get too deep in my head. Left to my own devices, I become a swirl of selfishness and self-doubt, a soup flavored by scarcity and striving. The isolation is disorienting at best and despairing at worst. It is as if, left to myself, I lose a part of myself. Psychiatrist and author Curt Thompson writes, "We need others to bear witness to our deepest longings, our greatest joys, our most painful shame, and all the rest, to have any sense at all of ourselves. Who we are is not separate from each other, a suitcase that we carry all on our own. Belonging to ourselves is inextricably linked with our belonging to each other. But that does not mean that community comes easily." A few weeks ago, I sat in our church service on a Sunday morning, making a list of all the things that seemed to get in the way of connection. Worship music played in the background as I sat and scribbled down what came to mind. Pace of life, the pressure to be perfect, politics, a lack of curiosity and imagination, living more life online than off, anxiety, depression, individualism, theological differences, family differences, ethnic differences, the general inability to disagree with dignity. I could have kept going. In the last 2 years alone, so many barriers have wedged their way between us. And it can be enough to want to give up, to hide behind our self-sufficient walls where we tell ourselves, if I cannot be known, at least I can be safe. But are we really? Or by pulling back, do we lose a little more of ourselves, a little more of God, a little more of the way we are meant to be woven together? Barriers give the illusion of safety, but they often keep more out than in. On the night he was arrested, the last thing Jesus prayed was for the unity of all believers, the ones with him in the room and the ones to come. His words from John 17 are almost circular, an invitation. He prayed, "May they all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe you sent me. I have given them the glory you have given me, so that they may be one, as we are one. I am in them, and you are in me, so that they may be made completely one." Completely one. Not partway one or kind of one, completely. fully moving in and out from each other, closer to the God who made us, closer to the people He crafted us to be. There is a time and a place for boundaries. Boundaries are healthy and good. Connection does not require us to be all things to all people, to bow to the whims of the world. We can be authentic with all while still reserving our transparency for only a few. But walls are very different than boundaries. Walls are barriers to belonging. Sometimes without even realizing it, we build emotional and relational divides, hoping for security to keep other people at arm's length. But really, these walls are only an illusion of safety. The distance makes us feel safe for a moment, but sooner or later, our souls ache for more. We feel the loneliness in our flesh as if God embedded the words, "It is not good for man to be alone," deep inside the folds of our bodies. It is an undercurrent of longing that flows through our veins. Walls of busyness, self-sufficiency, or sameness might help us numb the ache, but the anesthetic will not last forever. Made in the image of a divine union, we are people created out of and for community. And despite how hard we work to resist it, we cannot escape the way our lives are woven together. Loving God and loving each other is a package deal. Our walls only get in the way. But how do we live into the longing rather than resist it? Barriers do not come down easily. Some are embedded in our culture like concrete. But the more we move toward each other and embrace a posture of understanding, the more we will begin to hear the echoes of Jesus' prayer wash over us. The more we will listen and lean in, the more we will see ourselves in each other. And the more we pursue a story outside our own, the more the greater story comes into view. Love might make us feel exposed, but we cannot receive it without being open. Because even though belonging can be awkward and bumpy and filled with risk, it is only in getting outside ourselves that we remember we were not made to carry the weight of our humanity alone. We are part of a whole that needs the whole, an appendage of a bigger body, a drop of holy communion, a single glimmer in a fuller reflection. Through belonging, we find more of ourselves. But first, we need to be a little lost. We need to feel the ache of wanting to be seen, known, and loved just as we are. We must look our longing in the face and learn to welcome it. Because that desire is not aimless, but rather an outreached hand leading us into more. I've heard it said that the only way out is through. And while I know it's true of grief, perhaps it is also true in relationships. The walls will not dismantle themselves. Rather, brick by brick, we can remove the barriers and begin to make our way through. Instead of ignoring the ache, we can follow it. We can keep showing up. We can send the text, call the friend, and resist the urge to fake a fever. We can be the one who invites people instead of always waiting for an invitation. The path to belonging is not without effort. But we keep going because it is in us. We place ourselves in the way of connection, not because it is fluffy or easy or will never hurt us, but because in moving toward each other, we find a better us and a fuller glimpse of God Himself. We were not made to live behind walls.
I hope you were moved by Sarah's thoughts and encouragement like I was. She'll be back with us in a few weeks, but if you'd like to connect with her in the meantime, find her at sarahewestfall.com and sign up for her weekly newsletter, The Shelf, for more of her artful words on faith and belonging. I'll be back next week chatting about our capacity for friendships and our expectation of those friendships. See you then.